The throbbing in Rachel Mitchell's arm had evolved from pain into something else entirely, a deep, bone-sick wrongness that made her stomach turn with every heartbeat. She pressed herself into the corner where the bathroom tile met the wall. Her phone clutched in her left hand, fingers slick with sweat. Blood dripped from her nose onto her borrowed t-shirt, and through her rapidly swelling right eye, the bathroom was becoming a blur of white and shadow. Beyond the door, Derek's footsteps had stopped. That was worse than the pacing. The silence meant he was thinking, planning. "Rach!" he called out, his voice carrying that sickeningly sweet edge she'd learned to fear more than his shouting. "Baby, I'm sorry. You know I love you." "Just open the door so we can talk about this." Rachel had heard those exact words after the first slap, after he'd squeezed her throat until she saw stars, after he'd locked her in the apartment for 3 days. But tonight was different. Tonight, she'd felt something snap in her arm when he'd twisted it behind her back. Tonight, the look in his eyes had been empty, final. With her left thumb, she navigated to her mother's contact, each letter a battle against the trembling in her hand and the fog settling over her thoughts. "Mom, please help, he broke my arm. I am scared he won't let me leave." She hit send and waited, her pulse hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. The doorknob rattled. "Rachel, don't test me right now. Open this door." Her phone lit up. Thank God. But the relief shattered the moment she read the screen. "Who is this?" "No." Rachel's vision swam as she pulled up the message thread. The number staring back at her was completely unfamiliar, no contact name, no photo, nothing. Her swollen eye must have caused her to tap the wrong thread. She'd just sent her desperate plea to a complete stranger. Before she could spiral further, another message appeared. "Where are you? Are you in immediate danger?" Derek's voice dropped to something cold and measured. "I'm gonna count to 5, Rachel. Then I'm coming in. And when I do, you're going to regret making me do this." Her thumbs flew across the screen, pain forgotten in the surge of adrenaline. 2247 Riverside Unit. 15. Locked in bathroom. Please don't call police. He's connected. His boss owns cops. It was true. Derek had made sure she understood that his work, whatever shadowy business he conducted in hushed phone calls and late-night meetings, came with protection. Going to the police would only make things worse. 1. Another message. "I'm sending someone. Do not open that door for anyone except the person I send. Stay exactly where you are." Rachel stared at the words, her broken arm cradled against her chest. Who had she just contacted? What had she done? But the alternative was waiting here for Derek to finish what he'd started. 2. She pressed herself deeper into the corner, making herself as small as possible. 3. 4. The seconds stretched into eternities. 5. The door didn't just break, it exploded inward, the cheap lock mechanism tearing through the frame with a splintering crack that made Rachel cry out. Derek filled the doorway, his face flushed purple, veins standing out in his neck. But underneath the rage, Rachel saw something else flickering in his eyes. Panic. "Who did you text?" he demanded, advancing on her. "Who the hell did you text, Rachel?" She couldn't form words, couldn't move as he crouched in front of her and grabbed her broken arm. The scream that tore from her throat was primal, inhuman. "I asked you a question." "Wrong number," she gasped between sobs. "I swear, Derek, it was the wrong number. I was trying to text my mom." He released her, and she collapsed, bile burning her throat. He was pacing again, both hands gripping his hair. And that's when she realized he was afraid. Actually afraid. "You stupid—" He kicked the cabinet hard enough that the mirror cracked. "Do you have any idea what you've done? If anyone finds out I can't even handle my own girlfriend, if word gets back to—" He cut himself off, but Rachel heard it anyway. The fear in his voice, the way his hands were shaking. Through the ringing in her ears, Rachel heard something else. A car engine, smooth and powerful, cutting off outside. Car doors, multiple doors closing with expensive, heavy thuds. Footsteps on the exterior stairs, moving with purpose. Derek heard it too. His head snapped toward the apartment's front door. "Who did you call?" he whispered, backing away from her. "Rachel, who the hell did you call?" "I told you, wrong number." The front door didn't open. It was kicked in with such force that the sound was like a detonation, the entire frame ripping free from the wall in a shower of splinters and drywall. Rachel heard Derek make a sound she'd never heard from him before, high, broken, terrified. Footsteps entered the apartment. Not rushing, not searching. Just walking with the absolute confidence of someone who had never known fear. "Where is she?" The voice was quiet, controlled, and carried an accent Rachel couldn't quite place. Korean, maybe, but shaped by years of English. Each word was precise, measured, like the man speaking was carefully restraining something dangerous beneath the surface. "Listen, I don't know who you think you are, but this is my place and you need to—" The sound of Derek being cut off was brutal and efficient. Rachel heard him hit the wall, heard the air forced from his lungs, heard the distinct sound of bone meeting plaster. "I will not ask again. Where is she?" "Bathroom," Derek wheezed. Rachel tried to stand, using the sink to pull herself up just as a figure appeared in the bathroom doorway. He was tall, easily 6'2" or 6'3", with the kind of build that came from discipline rather than vanity. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged in fashion magazines, except for the coldness in his eyes. Those eyes were dark, almost black, and they swept over Rachel with a precision that felt like being read, catalogued, assessed. His jaw tightened imperceptibly when his gaze landed on her arm. He wore an impeccably tailored dark suit that probably cost more than 6 months of Rachel's rent, and despite having just broken down a door, not a single hair was out of place. "You sent the message," he said. "It wasn't a question." Rachel managed a nod. He turned his head slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Jiho! Get her out of here! Take her to Dr. Yoon! Full examination, document everything! Everything!" A younger man appeared behind him, leaner, but with the same controlled intensity, his movements precise as he approached Rachel like she might bolt. "Miss, I'm going to help you walk. May I?" Rachel nodded, and Jiho's hand closed gently around her good arm, supporting her weight as her legs threatened to give out. As they moved toward the door, Rachel saw Derek pinned against the wall by the dark-haired man's hand around his throat, his feet dangling 6 inches off the floor. "Please," Derek gasped, his face turning gray. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know she was." "She is no one to you," the man said quietly, almost gently. "She has never been anything to you. Do you understand this?" Jiho was guiding Rachel out, his grip steady and surprisingly careful. She caught a glimpse of 2 more men in dark suits standing guard in the hallway, their faces impassive, before Jiho led her down the stairs. A black sedan idled at the curb, sleek and expensive-looking, its windows tinted so dark they reflected the streetlights like mirrors. Jiho opened the back door and helped her inside, where leather seats and perfectly controlled temperature wrapped around her like a cocoon. He slid in beside her and the car pulled away, silent as a ghost. "Who was that?" Rachel whispered, her voice cracking. "Who are you people?" Jiho's expression softened fractionally. "That was Kang Tae-jun, and you just became the most fortunate wrong number in this city's history." The name meant nothing to Rachel, but the way Jiho said it with reverence, with weight, told her everything. She'd texted someone powerful, someone dangerous, someone who had just saved her life. If you're into dark romance, wrong number fate, and powerful men who protect what's theirs, subscribe now. You're going to want to hear this. The man holding Derek against the wall hadn't broken a sweat. Kang Tae-jun stood with the posture of someone who'd spent years in a military academy, his spine straight, his movements economical and precise. Even the way he held Derek's hand wrapped around his throat like he was holding a piece of garbage seemed calculated, controlled. "You put your hands on her," Tae-jun said, his voice still quiet, still measured. Explain to me why I shouldn't break every bone in your body right now. Derek's face had gone from purple to gray. Please, I didn't. She's my girlfriend. This is between us. Wrong answer. Tae-jun's free hand moved so fast, Rachel almost missed it. The crack of impact echoed through the apartment as his fist connected with Derek's ribs. Derek's scream was cut off by the hand still on his throat. Let me be very clear about your situation, Tae-jun continued, as if they were discussing the weather. You are alive right now because I haven't decided otherwise. Your next words will determine whether that continues. From the hallway, one of the suited men spoke. Boss, we have a problem. Neighbors are getting curious. Tae-jun's jaw tightened fractionally. How long until she's clear? Jiho's getting her in the car now. Good. Tae-jun turned his attention back to Derek, whose eyes had rolled back slightly. He adjusted his grip, allowing Derek just enough air to remain conscious. Listen very carefully. You're going to disappear. Not from the city, from her life. You will not call her. You will not text her. You will not drive past her workplace or her friends' homes. You will not think about her. Do you understand? Derek managed a strangled nod. I'm not finished. Tae-jun leaned in closer, his voice dropping to something that made the temperature in the room seem to plummet. If I hear that you've so much as looked in her direction, if I receive even a whisper that you've tried to contact her, I will find you. And when I do, what I've done to you tonight will feel like mercy. Do we have an understanding? Yes, Derek wheezed. Yes, I understand. Tae-jun held him there for another moment, his dark eyes boring into Derek's terrified ones, making sure the message had penetrated. Then he released him. Derek crumpled to the floor like a puppet with cut strings, gasping and coughing. Minho, Tae-jun said, adjusting his cuffs as if he'd just finished a business meeting. The blonde man from the hallway stepped into the room. Sir? Make sure he understands that his employer no longer requires his services. Effective immediately. Minho's smile was cold. Consider it done. Tae-jun turned and walked back through the destroyed apartment, his shoes crunching over splintered wood and shattered drywall. He paused in the bathroom doorway, his eyes scanning the small space where Rachel had been trapped. Blood droplets on the tile. A phone charger cord dangling from the wall. The shattered cabinet mirror, reflecting fragmented images of violence. His hands flexed once, the only outward sign of emotion. Outside, the night air was crisp and clean, washing away the claustrophobic anger that had filled the apartment. The black sedan was already gone, carrying Rachel to safety. Tae-jun's own car, a sleek black Mercedes, waited at the curb, his driver standing at attention beside it. Dr. Yoon's clinic, Tae-jun said, sliding into the back seat. Yes, sir. As they pulled away from Riverside Apartments, Tae-jun pulled out his phone and read the message thread again. The desperate plea, the misspelled words, the raw fear bleeding through each character. He'd been in a meeting with the Nakamura family when the text had come through a wrong number that had landed in his personal phone, the one only a handful of people knew existed. Most people would have ignored it, would have sent a brief wrong number and moved on with their evening. But Tae-jun had built his empire on seeing opportunities where others saw inconvenience. And something about that message, the genuine terror, the plea not to involve police, the mention of someone being connected, had triggered instincts he'd honed over 15 years in the shadows of this city. He'd excused himself from the meeting, made 2 phone calls, and had Jiho at that apartment in under 8 minutes. Now, he stared out the window at the city lights blurring past and wondered what exactly he'd just gotten himself into. He'd saved countless people over the years. It was good business to build loyalty, to be seen as someone who protected the vulnerable. But those had been calculated moves, strategic decisions made with clear outcomes in mind. This felt different. The fear in Rachel's eyes when he'd appeared in that bathroom doorway had been genuine, animal, absolute. And underneath it, he'd seen something else. A spark of recognition not of who he was, but of what he represented. Safety, power, the end of her nightmare. No one had looked at him like that in a very long time. His phone buzzed. Jiho. At Dr. Yoon's. Multiple fractures in right arm. Bruised ribs. Possible concussion. She's asking about you. Taejun's thumb hovered over the keyboard. What did you say to a woman who just accidentally texted the most dangerous man in the city? Who'd just watched him brutalize her abuser? Who was now under his protection, whether she understood what that meant or not? Tell her I'll explain everything when she's ready to hear it. He pocketed the phone and settled back into the leather seat. The driver knew better than to ask questions. They rode in silence toward the private clinic in Hanamdong, where Dr. Yoon would be documenting every injury Derek had inflicted, building a file that would ensure the man could never claim self-defense, could never spin a story that made him the victim. Taejun had learned long ago that the most effective power wasn't the kind you demonstrated. It was the kind you held in reserve, the threats you never had to make explicit because everyone already knew what you were capable of. But tonight, he'd made an exception. Tonight, he'd let Derek see exactly what happened to men who hurt women under Taejun's protection. And Rachel Mitchell, whether she knew it or not, was now under his protection. The question was, what was he going to do about it? Rachel woke to softness. That was the first thing her brain registered, not pain, though that came shortly after, but the feeling of Egyptian cotton sheets against her skin, the weight of a down comforter that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and the gentle give of a mattress that seemed to cradle her body like water. This wasn't her apartment. This wasn't a hospital. She opened her eyes to find herself staring at a ceiling that was easily 12 feet high, painted a soft dove gray with crown molding that looked hand-carved. Floor-to-ceiling windows lined one wall, revealing a view of the city that could only exist from extreme height. The Han River glittered in the distance, and the buildings spread out below like a carpet of light and steel. You're awake. Good. Rachel's head snapped toward the voice, sending a spike of pain through her skull. A man stood at the foot of the bed, older, maybe 60, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a white coat over dress clothes and carried himself with the calm authority of someone who'd spent decades in medicine. Please, don't move too quickly, he said, approaching with his hands visible, non-threatening. I'm Dr. Yoon. You're safe here. Do you remember what happened? Fragments came back. The bathroom. Derek's face. The stranger with cold eyes. Being carried to a car. Where am I? Rachel's voice came out hoarse, cracking on the last word. You're in a secure location. A penthouse in Hanamdong. Dr. Yoon pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. You were brought here last night after your incident. I've been treating your injuries. Rachel looked down at herself. Her right arm was in a pristine white cast, elevated on pillows. She wore clothes she didn't recognize, soft cotton pajamas that felt expensive. Her ribs were wrapped, and when she touched her face, she felt the ghost of swelling around her eye, significantly reduced from what she remembered. How long have I been asleep? About 14 hours. I administered a sedative after setting your arm. You have a radial fracture clean break. It will heal well with proper care. 2 bruised ribs. Minor concussion. Various contusions. Dr. Yoon's expression darkened slightly. You're very lucky someone intervened when they did. Lucky? Rachel almost laughed, but it hurt too much. The man who brought me here, she said slowly. Kang Tae-jun. Who is he? Dr. Yoon's face became carefully neutral. That's a conversation you should have with him directly. What I can tell you is that you're under his protection now, and that means you're safer than you've been in a very long time. That's not an answer. No, Dr. Yoon agreed, standing. But it's the only one I can give you. I'll be checking on you twice daily until your injuries are healed. In the meantime, there's a nurse Soo-min who will be available if you need anything. The penthouse is fully stocked. You'll find clothes in the closet that should fit you. Wait! Rachel tried to sit up, wincing at the pull in her ribs. I can't afford any of this. I don't have insurance that would cover private medical care, and I definitely can't pay for. She gestured vaguely at the opulent room around her. Whatever this is, Dr. Yoon paused at the door. Mr. Kang has made it very clear that all expenses are taken care of. You are not to worry about money, Miss Mitchell. But I don't even know him. Why would he? That, Dr. Yoon said gently, is another question for Mr. Kang. He left, closing the door with a soft click that somehow felt final. Rachel sat in the enormous bed, her mind racing despite the lingering fog of medication. She remembered the way Tae-jun had looked at her in that bathroom cold assessment, followed by something darker when he'd seen her injuries. The controlled violence in his voice when he'd spoken to Derek. The military precision of his men. She wasn't stupid. She'd lived in this city long enough to know what men like that were. Men who commanded that kind of loyalty, who could mobilize armed guards in minutes, who spoke with accents that carried the weight of old money and older violence. Kang Tae-jun was exactly the kind of man Derek had warned her about. The kind who operated in shadows, who owned pieces of the city the way other people owned furniture. A mafia boss, or something close enough to make no difference. And she was in his home, wearing his clothes, breathing his air. Rachel pushed herself carefully out of bed, testing her legs. They held, though everything hurt. She walked slowly to the windows, her bare feet sinking into carpet so plush it felt like walking on clouds. The view was dizzying. They had to be at least 30 stories up, maybe more. The room itself was beautiful in an understated way. Minimalist furniture in shades of gray and cream, original art on the walls, actual paintings, not prints. A bookshelf lined with leather-bound volumes in Korean and English. Fresh flowers in a vase on the dresser, their scent subtle and expensive. It was a cage, she realized. A beautiful, luxurious cage, but a cage nonetheless. She found the closet Dr. Yoon had mentioned. It was the size of her old bedroom, lined with clothes that still had tags on them. All in her size. Jeans, sweaters, dresses, shoes. Casual wear and formal wear. Everything someone might need if they were planning to stay for a while. The panic that had been lurking at the edges of her consciousness started to creep in. How did he know her size? How long had he been planning this? What exactly did "under his protection" mean? A soft knock interrupted her spiral. A young woman entered, pretty and professional in dark slacks and a crisp white blouse. "Miss Mitchell, I'm Soo Min. Dr. Yoon said you were awake. Can I get you anything? Tea? Coffee? Breakfast?" "I need to make a phone call," Rachel said. "My mom, she'll be worried. I need to tell her I'm okay." Soo-min's smile faltered slightly. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Kang requested that all outside contact be limited until he's had a chance to speak with you. For your safety." "My safety," Rachel repeated, her voice flat. "Am I a prisoner here?" "No, of course not. But Mr. Kang is very careful about security. There are protocols." "Where is he? When do I get to have this conversation everyone keeps saying I need to have with him?" "He'll be here this evening. He wanted to give you time to rest and recover first." Soo-min moved toward the door, still maintaining that pleasant, professional smile. "Please, Miss Mitchell, let me bring you something to eat. You'll feel better with food in your stomach." After she left, Rachel stood in the middle of the golden cage and tried to figure out exactly what kind of deal she'd made with the devil when she'd sent that text to the wrong number. Outside the windows, the city spread out below her like a kingdom. And somewhere in it, Kang Tae-jun was making decisions about her life without her input, wrapping her in protection that felt increasingly like possession. Rachel touched her cast, feeling the solid weight of it. A reminder that whatever this was, it was better than what she'd escaped. But better didn't mean safe. And safe didn't mean free. The phone appeared on her nightstand the next morning. Not her phone, a new one. Sleek and expensive, with a single contact already programmed in. Kang Tae-jun. Rachel stared at it for a full minute before it buzzed with an incoming message. "Good morning. Dr. Yoon tells me you slept well." She picked up the phone with her left hand, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. "What did you say to a man who'd saved your life and then locked you in a tower?" "I want to go home." The response came almost immediately. Your apartment is being cleaned and secured. You can return when it's safe. When will that be? When I'm certain Derek won't be a problem. Rachel's jaw tightened. She typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, I need to talk to my mother. She'll be worried. This time, the pause was longer. When the message came through, she could almost hear his voice in the carefully chosen words. Give me her number. I'll have someone contact her. Let her know you're safe and recovering from an accident, unless you'd prefer to tell her the truth about what happened. Rachel's finger hovered over the screen. Tell her mother the truth? That her daughter had spent 2 years being systematically destroyed by a man she'd thought she loved? That she'd hidden bruises under long sleeves and blamed her isolation on being busy with work? That she'd finally texted for help and accidentally connected with someone who operated outside the law? No. Tell her I'm recovering. Tell her I'll call when I can. Understood. She set the phone down and walked to the windows, watching the city wake up 37 floors below. Part of her wanted to throw the phone against the wall, to scream at the unfairness of trading one form of control for another. But another part, the part that remembered Derek's hands on her throat, the sound of the bathroom door splintering, knew that Taejun's control came with something Derek's never had. A promise of safety. Over the next 3 days, the texts became a rhythm. How is the pain today? Better. Dr. Yoon adjusted my medication. Good. Are you eating enough? Soo Min is force-feeding me. I'm fine. She's doing her job. You lost too much weight. Rachel found herself checking the phone more often than she wanted to admit. The messages were always brief, professional, but there was something underneath them, a care that felt at odds with the coldness she'd seen in his eyes that first night. On the 4th day, she initiated the conversation. Can I ask you something? Always. Why did you help me? You didn't know me. You could have just told me I had the wrong number. The response took longer this time. Rachel watched the 3 dots appear and disappear twice before the message finally came through. I've spent 15 years building something in this city. Power, influence, control. But none of it means anything if I can't use it to stop men like Derek from hurting women like you. Rachel read it 3 times, looking for the lie, the manipulation. But there was something raw in those words, something that felt true. What happened to him? Nothing he didn't deserve. He won't bother you again. That's a promise. How can you be sure? Because I made it very clear what would happen if he did. And I don't make empty threats, Rachel. It was the first time he'd used her first name. The intimacy of it made her breath catch. You're afraid of me, came the next message. I understand why, but I need you to know something. What? I am not him. I will never be him. What happened to you, what he did to you that doesn't happen in my world, not to people under my protection. Rachel's vision blurred. She swiped at her eyes angrily, frustrated by the tears. I don't even know you. I know. And I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to let me prove that I'm worthy of your trust. One day at a time. The texts became longer, more personal. Taejun would send messages late at night, brief glimpses into his life that felt like secrets. Stuck in a meeting with men who talk too much and say too little, I'd rather be reading. What do you read? History, mostly. Military strategy. Philosophy. Occasionally fiction, when I can justify the time. That sounds lonely. It is. Rachel found herself sharing things she hadn't meant to share. The dream of becoming a teacher that she'd abandoned when Derek told her it was impractical. Her love of literature, especially the Bronte sisters. The way she'd felt herself disappearing over the past 2 years, becoming smaller and quieter until she barely recognized herself. He did that on purpose, Taejun wrote. Made you small so he could feel big. That's what weak men do. And what do strong men do? They find strong women and become better because of them. Rachel stared at that message for a long time. On the 7th day, she asked the question that had been building in her chest since she'd woken in the golden cage. When are you going to visit? Or are you planning to keep me at a distance forever? The response was immediate. I didn't want to pressure you. You're healing. You've been through trauma. I thought giving you space was the right thing. I've had space. What I need are answers. Face to face. Tomorrow night. I'll have Sumin prepare dinner. If you're comfortable with that. Rachel's heart hammered in her chest as she typed, I'm comfortable with that. She set the phone down and caught her reflection in the darkened window. Her bruises had faded to yellow-green shadows. The swelling around her eye was gone. She looked like herself again, or maybe like a version of herself she'd forgotten existed. Tomorrow, she would sit across from Kang Tae-jun and ask him the questions that had been circling her mind for a week. Who was he, really? What did he want from her? And why did his text messages make her feel safer than she'd felt in years? Her phone buzzed one more time. Rachel? Yes? Thank you for trusting me enough to ask for answers. I know it's not easy. She smiled, despite herself, her thumb moving across the screen. Thank you for answering a wrong number text from a stranger. Best wrong number I've ever received. Rachel set the phone on the nightstand and crawled into bed, her heart lighter than it had been since before she could remember. Outside the windows, the city glittered like a promise, and for the first time in 2 years, she felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. Rachel changed clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a soft cream sweater from the closet. Simple, but not too casual. She wanted to look like herself, or at least the version of herself she was trying to remember how to be. Soo-min had transformed the dining area into something intimate. Candles flickered on the table, and the smell of perfectly cooked food drifted from the kitchen. It was too romantic, Rachel thought. Too much like a date, and not enough like an interrogation. But then the elevator doors opened, and Kang Tae-jun stepped into the penthouse, and all her carefully prepared questions evaporated. He looked different than she remembered. Less like a weapon, and more like a man. He'd traded the charcoal suit for dark slacks and a black dress shirt, the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His hair was slightly less perfect, as if he'd been running his hands through it. But those eyes, dark and assessing, were exactly as she remembered. Rachel. He stopped a respectful distance away, his hands visible, non-threatening. Thank you for agreeing to this. I didn't have much choice, she said, then winced at how harsh it sounded. Sorry, I just mean... No, you're right. You didn't choose any of this. He moved toward the table, pulling out a chair for her. But you're choosing to hear me out now. That's something. They sat across from each other, and Soo-min appeared with wine. Rachel noticed Tae-jun's barely perceptible nod before the nurse disappeared back into the kitchen, giving them privacy. You have questions, Tae-jun said, his hands folded on the table. Ask them. Rachel took a sip of wine for courage. Who are you? And don't give me the corporate executive answer. I want the truth. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it had reached his eyes. The truth is complicated. Try me. Tae-jun leaned back in his chair, studying her for a moment. My family came from Seoul with nothing but ambition and a willingness to do what others wouldn't. My grandfather built an empire in the shadows, smuggling, protection, information. My father expanded it, made it legitimate in the ways that mattered. Real estate, shipping, import-export. But the foundation remained the same. You're telling me you're in the MAFIA. I'm telling you I operate in spaces where the law is more flexible than most people believe. I have varied interests, some of them perfectly legal, some of them existing in gray areas that keep my lawyers employed. He paused. I won't lie to you, Rachel. What I do isn't always clean. But it follows a code. What code? I don't deal in drugs. I don't traffic people. I don't prey on the vulnerable. His jaw tightened. Men like Derek, they're parasites. They take power from people who can't fight back. That's not power. That's cowardice. Rachel's fingers traced the stem of her wine glass. And what you did to him, was that justice or revenge? Both. Tae-jun's eyes met hers, unflinching. I won't apologize for that. I'm not asking you to. Rachel surprised herself with the words. He deserved it. Maybe worse. Soo-min appeared with the first course, something delicate and perfectly plated. They ate in silence for a moment. the tension shifting into something else. Something almost comfortable. "Can I ask you something now?" Taejun said. "That seems fair. In your texts, you mentioned wanting to be a teacher. Why did you stop pursuing that?" Rachel set down her fork, the question hitting somewhere tender. "Derek said it was impractical, that I'd never make enough money, that I was being naive about how the world works. Eventually, I started believing him. He was wrong. Maybe, but it doesn't matter now. I'm 26 with no degree, no savings, and a healing broken arm. That dream died a long time ago." Taejun was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming once against the table, the first nervous gesture she'd seen from him. "What if it didn't have to be dead?" "What do you mean?" "I have investments all over this city. One of them is a community education center in Songpagu. We offer after-school programs, tutoring, adult education classes. The director has been looking for someone to coordinate the literature and writing programs." He paused. "Someone who actually cares about teaching." Rachel's heart stuttered. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance to do what you love. The pay is fair, the hours are flexible, and you'd be helping people who actually need it. Kids from families who can't afford private education. Adults trying to finish degrees they never got. Why would you do that?" Taejun leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Because I meant what I said in my texts. I want to prove I'm worthy of your trust. And because watching someone's dreams die is one of the cruelest things in the world. Derek tried to kill yours. I'd like to help bring it back to life." Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. "This is manipulation. You're manipulating me." "Yes," he agreed simply. "But it's manipulation that benefits you. You get a job you'll love. I get to keep you close enough to protect. And maybe—" he stopped himself. "Maybe what? Maybe I get to know you better. Outside of trauma and rescue. I'd like that, Rachel." She should say no. Should recognize this for what it was, a powerful man wrapping chains in silk and calling them gifts. But she looked at Kang Taejun across the table, at the careful hope in his eyes, and realized something terrifying. She wanted this, wanted the job, wanted the chance to rebuild herself, and yes, wanted to know him better too. "I have conditions," she said. "Name them. I want to see the center first. Meet the director. Make sure this is real and not just some elaborate way to keep me under surveillance. Done. And I want to be able to leave. The penthouse, I mean. I can't stay locked up here forever." Taejun's expression darkened slightly. "You can leave, but you'll have security with you. Discreet, but present. Derek may be handled, but I have enemies who would love to exploit any perceived weakness." "And I'm a weakness? You're under my protection. That makes you leverage," he said it matter-of-factly, without apology. "I won't lie about the danger, but I will keep you safe." Rachel took another sip of wine, her mind racing. "This is insane. A week ago, I was trapped in a bathroom. Now I'm having dinner with a mafia boss who's offering me my dream job. Life is strange that way. Is this—" she hesitated. "Is this just about protection, or is there something else happening here?" Taejun's gaze held hers, and for the first time, she saw something vulnerable flicker across his face. "I don't know yet, but I'd like the chance to find out. If you're willing." Rachel thought about the texts, the care hidden in professional words, the way he'd saved her without asking for anything in return. She thought about the dragon who'd destroyed her nightmare and then given her space to heal. "Okay," she said quietly. "Show me the center. Let me meet the director, and we'll see where this goes." Taejun's smile was small but genuine. "That's all I'm asking." They finished dinner talking about books and teaching philosophy and the city they both loved. And for the first time since sending that wrong number text, Rachel felt like maybe she wasn't trapped in a golden cage after all. Maybe she was standing at the threshold of something new. The Songpa Community Education Center didn't look like it belonged to a man who operated in shadows. 3 stories of glass and light brick, tucked between a park and a row of small shops. It looked wholesome, hopeful, the kind of place where good things happened. Rachel stepped out of the black sedan, Taejun's sedan, with Jiho driving and another guard she'd learned was named Minjae in the passenger seat, and felt something loosen in her chest. Children's artwork decorated the windows. A group of teenagers sat on the front steps, laughing over their phones. "It's real," she said, more to herself than to Jiho. "Did you think it wouldn't be?" Jiho's tone was mild, but there was a hint of amusement in it. "I didn't know what to think." Taejun was waiting inside the lobby, talking to a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. He looked different here, still polished, still powerful, but softer somehow, like he'd left part of his armor at the door. "Rachel," he gestured her over. "This is Director Han Mi-sun. She runs this place." Mi-sun's handshake was firm, her smile genuine. "Mr. Kang has told me about you. It's a pleasure to meet you, though I'm sorry about the circumstances that brought you into his orbit." Rachel blinked. "He told you?" "I've worked with Mr. Kang for 8 years. I know exactly who he is and what he does." Mi-sun's expression was matter of fact. "I also know that this center has helped over 3,000 children and adults get education they couldn't afford otherwise. Sometimes good things come from complicated sources." "That's one way to put it," Rachel muttered. Mi-sun laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Come, let me show you what we do here." The tour was overwhelming in the best way. Classrooms filled with students ranging from elementary age to adults in their 60s. A library stocked with books in Korean, English, and Chinese. Computer labs with state-of-the-art equipment. Music rooms. Art studios. A small theater space where a group of teenagers was rehearsing a play. "We offer after-school programs for children whose parents work late," Mi-sun explained as they walked. "Adult education classes for people trying to finish degrees or learn new skills. ESL programs, test preparation. All free or sliding scale based on income." "How is this funded?" Rachel asked. Mi-sun glanced at Taejun, who'd been following silently. "Mr. Kang is a generous donor, as are several of his business associates. We also receive some government grants." "The government knows you're associated with him?" "The government knows I donate to education programs," Taejun said smoothly. "They don't ask questions as long as the money is clean and the programs are legitimate, which they are." Mi-sun stopped outside a classroom where a young woman was teaching a group of adults basic reading skills. "This is what I need help with. Our literature and writing programs have grown faster than I expected. I need someone to coordinate schedules, develop curriculum, train volunteers, and occasionally teach classes themselves." "That's a lot of responsibility," Rachel said, watching the teacher patiently sound out words with a man who looked old enough to be her grandfather. "It is. But Mr. Kang seems to think you're up for it." Rachel turned to look at Taejun, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet. "Can we talk? Privately?" Mi-sun excused herself with practiced grace, leaving them alone in the hallway. Through the window, Rachel could see the park, where a group of children was playing soccer. "This is really what you do with your money?" she asked. "Education programs and community centers?" "Some of it." Taejun moved to stand beside her at the window. "I told you I have varied interests. This is one of them." "Why?" He was silent for a moment, his jaw working. "My mother was a school teacher before she married my father. She believed education was the only real power people could own. No one could take it away, no one could steal it. It was yours forever." He paused. "She died when I was 16. Cancer. This center, it's named after her. The Han Mi-sun you just met is her younger sister." Rachel felt her throat tighten. "You named it after your mother." "The Lee Sun-hee Education Center. Sun-hee was her name. Light and grace." His voice was carefully controlled, but Rachel heard the emotion underneath. "I can't change what I am. I can't undo the things I've done to build my empire, but I can do this. I can give people the power my mother believed in." Rachel looked at him, really looked at him, and saw past the dangerous exterior to something more complicated underneath. A man trying to balance darkness with light, violence with education, control with kindness. "If I take this job," she said slowly. I'm choosing to be part of your world. The morally gray parts. The complicated parts. Yes. And you'll still protect me. Still have guards following me around. Yes. That's non-negotiable. Rachel turned back to the window, watching the children play. 2 weeks ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd die in that bathroom, or spend the rest of my life being small and afraid. And now? Now, I'm standing in a building funded by MAFIA money, being offered a job that could actually mean something. It's insane. It is, Taejun agreed. But it's also the first time in years that I've felt like I might have a future worth living. She turned to face him. I want this job. I want to help these people. And I want to do it knowing exactly what I'm getting into. Something flickered in Taejun's eyes, relief, maybe, or satisfaction. You understand, there's no going back. Once you're part of my world, even the legitimate parts, people will associate you with me. There could be risks. I know. Rachel surprised herself with how steady her voice was. But I think the risk of staying small forever is worse. Taejun's smile was slow and genuine. Then welcome to the Lee Sun-hee Education Center, Program Coordinator Mitchell. They shook hands, and Rachel felt the warmth of his palm against hers, the careful strength in his grip. This was a turning point, she knew. A choice she was making with her eyes open. Misun returned with paperwork and a schedule, already treating Rachel like part of the team. They talked through responsibilities and expectations, and Rachel found herself excited in a way she hadn't been in years. This was real work. Meaningful work. The kind of thing she'd dreamed about before Derek had convinced her dreams were foolish. As they prepared to leave, Taejun pulled her aside one more time. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? You're the one offering me the job. For trusting me enough to say yes. For choosing this, even knowing what it means. His hand brushed her arm, gentle and brief. For not staying small. Rachel felt warmth bloom in her chest, dangerous and thrilling. Don't make me regret it. I won't, he promised. And looking into his eyes, she believed him. Outside, the city hummed with life, and Rachel Mitchell walked into her new purpose with her head high and her heart open. The golden cage had become a door, and she was choosing to walk through it. 3 months later, Rachel stood in front of a classroom of 8 adult learners and realized she was happy. Actually, genuinely happy in a way she'd forgotten was possible. Remember, there's no such thing as a wrong interpretation, she said, gesturing to the poem they'd been discussing, Maya Angelou's Still I Rise. Literature is about what it makes you feel, what it makes you think. Your experience is valid. Missus Kim, a 63-year-old woman who'd never learned to read beyond a 3rd grade level, raised her hand tentatively. It makes me feel brave, like I can do hard things. That's exactly right, Rachel said, her smile genuine and warm. That's the power of words. After class, she gathered her materials and headed to her office, a small space with a window overlooking the park, filled with books she'd chosen herself and student artwork on the walls. Director Han had given her free rein with the literature program, and it had flourished under her care. Enrollment had doubled. Volunteers were requesting training. She'd even started a creative writing workshop that met twice a week. Her cast had come off 6 weeks ago, and the only reminder of that night was a faint scar on her arm and the occasional nightmare that woke her gasping. But even the nightmares were fading. Because now, when she woke up afraid, she could text Taejun, and he'd respond within minutes, his words steady and grounding until she could sleep again. Their texts had evolved. Less formal now, more personal. He'd send her pictures of books he thought she'd like. She'd tell him about her students' breakthroughs. They'd argue about literature and philosophy, his messages sharp and challenging in ways that made her think. But they hadn't been alone together since that dinner. He was giving her space, she realized, letting her build a life that was hers before asking for more. She was starting to wish he'd stop being so considerate. Rachel locked her office and headed for the lobby, where Jiho waited as always. He'd become a familiar presence, quiet, professional, occasionally cracking a dry joke that surprised her. She'd stopped noticing the security, stopped feeling watched. Now it just felt like having a particularly dedicated friend. Same schedule tomorrow? Jiho asked as they headed for the car. Actually, I'm staying late. We have the creative writing showcase. Students reading their work. I'll let the boss know. Rachel's heart did that stupid flutter thing it had been doing lately whenever someone mentioned Taejun. Is he coming? Jiho's smile was knowing. Wouldn't miss it. The showcase was beautiful. 15 students, ranging from teenagers to elderly adults, reading poems and short stories they'd crafted. Rachel watched from the side of the small theater, her chest tight with pride as Mrs. Kim read a piece about raising 5 children alone, her voice shaking but strong. She felt Taejun arrive before she saw him. The air in the room shifted, the way it always did when he entered a space. She turned to find him standing in the back, dressed in one of his perfect suits, his eyes fixed not on the stage but on her. He smiled, and her stomach flipped. After the showcase, after the students had dispersed and the space had emptied, Rachel found him waiting in the hallway outside her office. You came, she said, suddenly nervous. I told you I would. He stepped closer, and Rachel caught the scent of his cologne, something dark and expensive. You've built something extraordinary here, Rachel. Misun showed me the enrollment numbers, the feedback from students. You're changing lives. I'm just teaching them to read and write. You're giving them power, just like my mother believed. His voice softened. She would have liked you. Rachel's breath caught. That's a lot to live up to. You already do. Taejun reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face, a touch so gentle it made her ache. Can I take you to dinner? Somewhere that's not my penthouse or this center. A real date. A date, Rachel repeated, testing the word. Yes, if you want. I know I've been keeping my distance, giving you space to heal and build your life here. But Rachel, he paused, his jaw tightening. I can't keep pretending I don't want more. More? You. I want you. Not as someone I'm protecting or helping. As someone he seemed to struggle with the words. Someone I'm falling for. Rachel's heart hammered so hard she thought he must be able to hear it. I thought it was just me, feeling this. It's not just you. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. After Derek, I don't trust my judgment. What if I'm just confused? What if this is just gratitude? Or, Taejun cupped her face in his hands, his touch achingly gentle. May I kiss you? Rachel nodded, unable to form words. He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and pressed his lips to hers. It wasn't desperate or demanding. It was careful and reverent, like she was something precious that might break. His thumb stroked her cheek as he kissed her, and Rachel felt something inside her chest crack open. This was nothing like Derek. Nothing like the way she'd been kissed before, taken, claimed, controlled. This was being cherished. When he pulled back, his eyes searched hers. Still think it's just gratitude? No, she whispered. Oh God, no. Good. His smile was soft, genuine. Because I've been falling for you since you sent that text. The bravery it took to ask for help. The way you've rebuilt yourself. The fierce way you protect your students. He brushed his thumb across her lower lip. You're extraordinary, Rachel Mitchell. And I want the chance to show you that every day. Rachel's eyes stung with tears. I'm falling too. I tried not to. It's too fast, too complicated, too insane, he offered with a slight smile. Yeah, but I can't help it. You make me feel safe and challenged and seen all at once. And when you kiss me like that, she broke off, shaking her head. Like what? Like I'm precious, like I matter. You do matter. His voice was fierce now, protective. You matter to those students. You matter to me, son. And you matter to me, more than you know. Rachel stood on her toes and kissed him again. this time with more confidence. She felt his surprise, then his response, his arms coming around her, pulling her close but never too tight, always giving her space to breathe, to choose, to stay or go. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing harder, Taejun rested his forehead against hers. "Dinner?" he asked again. "Yes. But Taejun? I want to keep going slow. I want to do this right. We'll go as slow as you need," he promised. "I'm not going anywhere." They stood in the hallway of the education center, wrapped in each other's arms, and Rachel felt the last piece of her old life fall away. She wasn't the girl who'd cowered in bathrooms anymore. She wasn't Derek's victim or Taejun's charity case. She was Rachel Mitchell, teacher, survivor, woman falling in love with a dragon who'd learned to be gentle, and for the first time in her life, she was choosing her own story. 6 months of being cherished felt like a lifetime and no time at all. Rachel had moved out of the penthouse 3 months ago, not far, just to a apartment in the same building, 2 floors down. Her own space, her own lease, paid for with her own salary. Taejun had argued about the security implications, but he'd ultimately respected her need for independence. The guards remained, of course, but they were discreet shadows now, familiar faces she'd learned to accept. She spent most nights at his place anyway. They'd fallen into a rhythm that felt natural, inevitable. Dinners together when his schedule allowed. Quiet evenings reading side by side on his couch. Mornings where she'd wake up wrapped in his arms, feeling safer than she'd ever thought possible. He'd introduced her to parts of his legitimate business real estate holdings, the shipping company, investments that were actually legal. He kept the darker elements separate, protecting her from the violence that occasionally touched his world. But she knew it was there. Saw it sometimes in the tension of his shoulders when certain phone calls came through. In the way Jiho and Minjae would suddenly become more alert, in the careful way Taejun would kiss her goodbye before late-night meetings he never fully explained. She'd chosen this, chosen him, and she didn't regret it. Tonight, he'd asked her to dress up. Something special, he'd said. A surprise. Rachel had chosen a deep burgundy dress that hugged her curves, simple and elegant. She'd let her hair down, the curls framing her face. When she looked in the mirror, she saw someone strong looking back, someone whole. The elevator opened directly into Taejun's penthouse, and Rachel stepped out to find the lights dimmed, candles flickering throughout the space. Soft music played something classical and romantic, but the penthouse was empty. "Taejun?" she called. "Out here." She followed his voice to the balcony, and her breath caught. Rose petals, thousands of them, scattered across the floor in deep reds and soft pinks, creating a path to where Taejun stood at the railing. The city spread out behind him, a glittering canvas of light and life. He wore a black suit that fit him like a dream, his hair perfectly styled, but it was his expression that made her heart stutter, nervous and hopeful and terrified all at once. "What is this?" Rachel asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Come here." She walked across the rose petals, their softness beneath her heels, until she stood before him. He took her hands in his thumbs stroking her knuckles. "Rachel, I've been thinking about what to say for weeks. I've written speeches and thrown them away. Asked for advice which, if you ever mention to anyone, I'll deny." A smile flickered across his face. "But everything I came up with felt wrong. Too formal, too calculated. So I'm just going to tell you the truth." "Okay," she breathed. "The night you sent that text, I was in a meeting discussing territory disputes and profit margins. My world was violence and strategy and careful calculations. It was cold, Rachel. I was cold. I'd convinced myself that was the only way to survive in my world, to become something hard and untouchable." His hands tightened on hers. "And then I read your message. This desperate plea from a stranger who'd accidentally found me in her darkest moment. I should have ignored it, should have sent someone else. But something in those words, in your fear and your bravery, made me stop everything and come myself. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. When I saw you in that bathroom, broken but still fighting, I realized I'd been wrong. Cold isn't the only way to survive. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay soft in a hard world. And you, his voice cracked slightly, you've taught me that. You've made me want to be better, softer, human again. Taejun, she whispered. He released her hands and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Rachel's heart stopped. I know it's only been 6 months. I know by conventional standards, this is too fast. But I've lived my whole life in a world where tomorrow isn't guaranteed, where waiting for the right time means missing your chance. He opened the box, revealing a ring that took her breath away. A deep red ruby surrounded by diamonds, set in platinum. This was my mother's engagement ring. My father gave it to her when they were young and stupid, and everyone told them they were moving too fast. It's beautiful, Rachel breathed. They had 32 years together before she died. 32 years of being young and stupid and in love. Taejun's eyes met hers, dark and intense. I want that with you, Rachel. However many years we get. I want to wake up next to you and argue about books and watch you change lives at the center. I want to protect you and be challenged by you and grow old being young and stupid together. He lowered himself to one knee, and Rachel's tears spilled over. I'm not a good man. I've done things I can't undo, made choices that keep me awake at night. My world is dangerous and morally complicated. But I promise you this, I will spend every day proving I'm worthy of you. I will cherish you and protect you and support every dream you have. I will be honest with you, even when the truth is ugly, and I will love you with everything I have. Taejun, she sobbed. Rachel Mitchell, will you marry me? She should think about it, should consider the implications, the danger, the absolute insanity of marrying a man like him after only 6 months. Should remember that she'd sworn never to lose herself to someone again. But looking at Kang Taejun kneeling in rose petals with his mother's ring and his heart in his eyes, Rachel realized something important. She wasn't losing herself. She was choosing, actively, consciously, with full knowledge of what she was walking into. Yes, she said, her voice clear and strong. Yes, I'll marry you. The smile that broke across his face was incandescent. He stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, as if it had always belonged there. Then he pulled her close and kissed her. Deep and passionate and full of promise, Rachel kissed him back, pouring 6 months of healing and hope and love into it. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, she rested her forehead against his. We're insane, she said. Completely. He kissed her nose, her cheeks, her forehead. Do you regret it? Not even a little. They stood on the balcony wrapped in each other's arms, the city glittering below them like a blessing. Rachel looked at the ruby on her finger, dark as blood, beautiful as promises, and felt her future unfold before her. It wouldn't be easy. His world would always carry shadows, and she'd have to be strong enough to stand beside him in the darkness. But she was strong now, had been forged in fire and rebuilt herself from the ashes. I love you, Taejun murmured against her hair. My fierce, brave girl. I love you too, Rachel said. My dragon. And in that moment, on a balcony covered in rose petals with the man who'd saved her life and taught her to save herself, Rachel Mitchell chose her forever. Young and stupid and perfectly, completely in love. The engagement had been public for 2 weeks. Taejun had insisted on it, wanted everyone in his world to know Rachel Mitchell was off limits, untouchable, protected by everything he commanded. He'd been so certain that making their relationship official would be a shield. He'd been wrong. Rachel had been leaving the education center late, later than usual. The creative writing showcase had run long, and she'd stayed to help clean up. Jiho had been with her, as always. Min-jae was supposed to meet them at the car. She didn't see the van until it was too late. It happened fast, professionally fast. A black van screeched to a stop, blocking their path. Men in masks poured out. Jiho had time to shout, to reach for his weapon, before something cracked against his skull and he went down hard. Rachel tried to run. She'd taken Taejun's self-defense lessons seriously for 3 months now, knew how to break a grip, how to strike vulnerable points, but there were too many of them. And when the cloth pressed against her face, chemically sweet and suffocating, her world dissolved into darkness. She woke to the smell of rust and mildew. Rachel's head throbbed. Her mouth tasted like copper, and when she tried to move, she realized her hands were bound behind her back. Zip ties, tight enough to bite into her wrists. Her ankles were similarly restrained. She's awake? Rachel forced her eyes open. Warehouse. Empty, abandoned, the kind of place where bad things happened and no one heard you scream. 3 men stood nearby, 2 of them built like brick walls. The third leaner, dressed better, clearly in charge. Miss Mitchell. The lean one approached, his accent thick Russian, maybe Ukrainian. Welcome. I apologize for the crude accommodations, but this is temporary. Rachel's training kicked in through the fear. Assess the situation. Don't show panic. Look for opportunities. Who are you? Her voice came out stronger than she felt. My name is Alexei Kosov. My brother Victor and I have business with your fiancé. He smiled, cold and calculating. Unfortunately, Mr. Kang has been uncooperative. We thought perhaps a more personal incentive would help him see reason. He'll kill you for this. Perhaps. But first he'll give us what we want. Territory in Gangnam, shipping routes through Busan, and $20 million in cash. A reasonable price for the woman he loves, yes? Rachel's mind raced. Taejun had mentioned the Kozov brothers, once Russian mafia trying to expand into Seoul, pushing boundaries, testing his patience. He'd called them reckless and stupid, operating without the careful balance that kept the city's underworld from descending into chaos. He won't negotiate with you, she said. That's not how he works. Alexei crouched in front of her, his eyes cold. Then I suppose we'll find out how much you're really worth to him. He stood and walked away, pulling out his phone. Rachel heard him speaking in Russian, presumably to Victor. The 2 guards remained, watching her with the blank expressions of men who'd done this before. Rachel tested the zip ties. Tight, but not impossible. Taejun had taught her this, had made her practice escaping restraints until she could do it in her sleep. In my world, he'd said, you need to know how to save yourself. She'd thought it was paranoid. Now she was grateful. She needed leverage. The guards were standing 10 feet away, bored but attentive. She couldn't break the ties while they were watching. She needed a distraction. Can I get some water? She called out, making her voice weak, frightened. Please. I feel sick. The larger guard tattoos, covering his neck, nose that had been broken multiple times, grunted something to his partner and walked toward the corner where supplies were stacked. Rachel shifted her position, subtle movements that looked like discomfort. She found the seam of the zip tie, the small square locking mechanism. Taejun's voice echoed in her head. Raise your hands above your head and bring them down hard against your core. The ties will snap at the lock point. But she needed both guards distracted. I think I'm going to throw up, she said, letting panic creep into her voice. The drugs, I'm going to be sick. Both guards turned to look at her, disgust on their faces. In that moment, Rachel raised her bound hands as high as the ties allowed and brought them down hard against her stomach, using all her core strength. The zip tie snapped. Her hands were free. The guards noticed too late. Rachel rolled, using momentum to bring her bound legs up, and reached for her ankles. The second zip tie was trickier, but fear and adrenaline made her fingers nimble. It broke just as the larger guard lunged for her. Taejun's training took over. Rachel ducked under his grab, came up inside his guard, and drove her palm upward into his nose. Cartilage crunched. Blood sprayed. He stumbled back, cursing. The second guard was faster, smarter. He caught her arm, twisted, trying to force her down. Rachel remembered Taejun's words. Joint locks work both ways. Apply pressure to the weakest point. She pivoted into the twist rather than against it, using his own force to overextend his elbow. Then she drove her foot down onto his knee, stomping hard on the lateral side. The crack was audible. So was his scream. He went down hard, his leg bent at an unnatural angle. Rachel didn't wait. She ran for the warehouse door, her heart hammering, her breath coming in gasps. She made it 5 steps before Alexei appeared, blocking her path. He held a gun, pointed casually at her chest. "Impressive," he said. "Kang taught you well. But this ends now." Rachel stopped, her mind racing. She'd broken free, fought back, but she wasn't bulletproof. She'd used everything Tae-jun had taught her, and it wasn't enough. "You're going to regret this," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "Perhaps, but you won't live to see it." He raised the gun, taking aim, and Rachel braced herself for the impact. The warehouse door exploded inward. Not opened, exploded. The sound was deafening. Metal and wood flying inward like shrapnel. Men poured through the breach, moving with military precision. She recognized them, Ji-ho. Blood crusted on his temple but very much alive, leading the charge. Min-jae and a dozen others in tactical gear. And behind them, moving with the controlled fury of an approaching storm, Kang Tae-jun. His eyes found her immediately, swept over her to assess injuries, then locked onto Alexei with such murderous intent that Rachel actually felt the temperature drop. "Step away from her," Tae-jun said, his voice quiet and absolutely terrifying. "Now." Alexei swung the gun toward Tae-jun instead. "Another step and I kill her anyway." He didn't finish. Tae-jun moved faster than Rachel had ever seen him move, covering the distance between them in a blur. His hand closed around Alexei's wrist, twisting with surgical precision. The gun clattered to the concrete. Then Tae-jun's other hand was at Alexei's throat, and he was being driven backward into the wall with enough force to crack the concrete. "You touched her," Tae-jun said, each word precise and deadly. "You put your hands on what's mine. Explain to me why you should live." Rachel had never seen him like this. All the careful control stripped away, revealing the dragon beneath. The other guards were being subdued by Ji-ho's team. Efficient and brutal. The man with the broken knee was screaming. The one with the shattered nose was unconscious. "Tae-jun." Rachel's voice cut through the violence. "I'm okay. I'm right here." His eyes flicked to her, and something in them softened fractionally. But his hand didn't leave Alexei's throat. "Did they hurt you? Drugged me, tied me up, but I'm okay." She walked toward him, her legs steadier now. "I broke free, just like you taught me." Pride flickered across his face. "That's my girl." Ji-ho appeared at Rachel's side, his expression concerned. "Miss Mitchell, we need to get you checked out." "I'm fine, Ji-ho, really." She touched Tae-jun's arm. "Let's go home." Tae-jun looked back at Alexei, whose face was turning purple. "Your brother Victor has 30 seconds to leave Seoul. If he's still in the city when I'm done here, I'll hunt him down and make him watch what I do to you. Are we clear?" Alexei managed a strangled nod. Tae-jun released him, and Alexei crumpled to the ground, gasping. Then Tae-jun turned to Rachel, his hands immediately cupping her face, his thumbs stroking her cheeks as his eyes searched hers for any sign of trauma. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "This is my fault. I made you a target." "No." Rachel covered his hands with hers. "This is their fault, and I handled it. I fought back. I survived. You did more than survive. You broke a man's knee and shattered another's nose." His smile was fierce and proud. "You're extraordinary." Rachel leaned into him, letting his strength surround her. "Take me home." As they walked out of the warehouse, Tae-jun's arm around her shoulders, Rachel looked back once at the carnage they were leaving behind. This was the price of power, the constant threat, the violence that lurked at the edges of their life. But she'd proven something tonight. She wasn't just Tae-jun's weakness. She was strong enough to survive his world, and that changed everything. The penthouse felt different when they returned. Not safer. Rachel understood now that nowhere was truly safe in Taejun's world, but it felt like theirs. A place they'd both chosen, both fought for. Dr. Yoon was waiting, summoned by Jiho during the rescue. He examined Rachel thoroughly, checking her pupils for signs of concussion, her wrists for nerve damage from the zip ties, drawing blood to identify whatever drug they'd used. Through it all, Taejun stood nearby, his jaw tight, his hands flexing periodically as if he wanted to break something. "She's fine," Dr. Yoon finally pronounced. "Remarkably fine, considering. The drug will clear her system in a few hours. Some bruising on her wrists, but no permanent damage. Miss Mitchell, you were very lucky." "It wasn't luck," Taejun said quietly. "It was training." After Dr. Yoon left, Rachel showered, washing away the smell of the warehouse and the chemical residue of whatever they'd used to knock her out. She stood under the scalding water until her skin turned pink, until she stopped shaking, until she felt like herself again. When she emerged in soft pajamas, her hair damp and curling, she found Taejun on the balcony. He stood at the railing, his jacket discarded, his shirt sleeves rolled up, staring out at the city with an expression that made her chest ache. "You're blaming yourself," she said, joining him. "I made you a target." His voice was flat, controlled the tone he used when he was holding back something volcanic. "I put a ring on your finger and painted a target on your back. The Kosofs saw you as leverage, as weakness. They were wrong." "They weren't." He turned to face her, and Rachel saw the anguish in his eyes. "Rachel, you could have died tonight. If you hadn't broken free, if my men hadn't tracked you in time." He couldn't finish. Rachel moved closer, taking his hands in hers. "But I did break free, because you taught me how. Because you prepared me for exactly this. It shouldn't have happened at all. No, it shouldn't have. But it did, and I survived it." She squeezed his hands. "Taejun, look at me." He met her gaze, and she saw the guilt eating at him. "I knew what I was signing up for when I said yes to you. I knew your world was dangerous. I chose it anyway." She brought his hand to her chest, over her heart. "I chose you, and tonight proved something important." "What?" "That I'm not just your weakness. I'm strong enough to stand beside you." Taejun's expression shifted surprise, then something deeper. "You broke a man's knee. I remembered everything you taught me. The pressure points, the joint locks, the way to escape restraints." Rachel smiled despite the seriousness of the moment. "You turned me into someone who can fight back. You were always someone who could fight back. I just gave you the tools." His hands came up to frame her face. "You were magnificent tonight. Terrifying and magnificent. Good, because I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it." "I'm listening." Rachel took a deep breath. "I won't be hidden away. I won't be locked in this penthouse or surrounded by so many guards that I can't breathe. I won't give up my work at the center or my life because people like the Kosofs exist." Taejun's jaw tightened. "Rachel." "No, let me finish." Her voice was firm. "I love you. I'm going to marry you. But I won't be another thing you protect and control. I need to be your partner, your equal. That means accepting the risks that come with your world, but also having agency in how we handle them. You're asking me not to protect you. I'm asking you to trust that I can protect myself, and when I can't, trust that I'll ask for help." She held his gaze. "Tonight, I fought back. But I was also smart enough to know when I was outmatched. I didn't try to be a hero. I survived until you could get there. That's partnership." Taejun was quiet for a long moment, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. "You want to be involved in my world, not just the legitimate parts." "I want to know what threats exist. I want to understand the territory disputes and the rival families and the power dynamics. I can't make smart decisions if I'm kept in the dark." She paused. I'm not asking to be involved in the violence, but I need to understand the landscape I'm living in. It will change you, knowing the things I know, seeing the things I see. I've already changed. That girl in the bathroom, she's gone. I'm someone new now, someone stronger. But I get to decide who that person becomes. Rachel moved closer, until they were barely breathing the same air. I want to stand beside you, not behind you, not in some gilded cage, beside you, as your partner. Taejun's eyes searched hers, looking for doubt, for fear. He must have found only determination because his expression softened into something like wonder. Partners, he repeated slowly. You understand what that means. The decisions I'll have to make, the compromises, the moral gray areas. I understand that you run an empire that exists in shadows. I understand that sometimes the law isn't enough, that sometimes justice requires getting your hands dirty. She held his gaze. I'm not naive anymore, Taejun. I know exactly who you are, and I'm choosing to stand with you anyway. You could have a normal life, a safe life. I could set you up somewhere far from here, somewhere the Kossoffs and everyone like them could never touch you, and spend the rest of my life wondering what happened to you. Missing you? Being half alive? She shook her head. No, I'd rather face danger with you than safety without you. Taejun pulled her into his arms, holding her tight enough that she could feel his heart hammering against her chest. You're the bravest person I've ever met. I learned from the best. He pulled back just enough to kiss her deep and claiming, and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. Partners, he said, the word carrying the weight of a vow. No more hiding you away. No more keeping you in the dark. You want to understand my world? I'll teach you everything. Everything? The good, the bad, and the ugly. The allies and the enemies. The deals and the threats. His eyes were serious. But Rachel, if I ever tell you something is too dangerous, if I ever ask you to step back, you need to trust that it's for a reason. As long as you explain why. As long as you treat me like an adult who can make informed decisions. Deal. He kissed her again, softer this time. We'll need to adjust security protocols. More training for you. Maybe bring you to some meetings. Let people see that you're not just my fiancé, you're my partner in every sense. Rachel smiled against his lips. Sounds perfect. They stood on the balcony as the city settled into late-night quiet, wrapped in each other's arms. The ruby engagement ring caught the light, deep red and beautiful and now carrying a different meaning. Not just a symbol of love, a symbol of partnership. The Kossoffs? Rachel asked. Victor left the city 2 hours ago. Alexei will be dealt with appropriately. Taejun's voice was cold. They won't threaten us again. Good. Rachel? Thank you for being strong enough to stand beside me. I know it would be easier to let me handle everything. But having you as a true partner, his voice roughened. It means everything. Rachel looked up at the man who'd saved her life and then taught her to save herself. The dragon who'd learned to be gentle but never stopped being dangerous, her partner in every sense of the word. We're going to be extraordinary together, she said. We already are. And standing on that balcony overlooking the city they both loved and the empire he'd built, Rachel Mitchell knew that she'd found something rare and precious. Not safety, safety was an illusion, but partnership, trust, love fierce enough to survive in the darkness. They'd face whatever came next together, as equals, as partners. As the dragon and the woman brave enough to stand beside him,